Everyone. My name is Adrian Bollier, and I'm a Senior Project Advisor at the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program, so in ICCEE. And I'll be moderating this session, which is dedicated to businesses under the call 2023 of the LIFE CET sub-program. Now, we're going to be focusing today on the topic called business, and it's one of the 13 topics that has been published on the 11th of May, and the deadline for submission is the 16th of November. Now, for this session, here's the agenda that we're going to have. If we can maybe show the first two slides. Yeah, next slide. So we're going to start with a presentation of the topic called business, which is supporting the clean energy transition of businesses. And so my colleagues Oronzo D'Aloisio and Filippo Gasparin will be presenting this. Then I'll give a quick glimpse of two topics which will not be presented in full, but they will be presented in full in session 5 at 1:30. But they are related to businesses also. One of them is integrated services for clean energy transition in buildings and businesses, and the other one is project development assistance for sustainable energy investments, called PDA. So if you've got more specific interest in those, you can still register for session 5 at 1:30, where you'll learn everything you want to know about these two. Now, as we know, all these topics may sound a bit abstract. We've also decided to make it easier for you, and we've invited two experienced project coordinators who've basically gone through the whole process of preparing an application, being selected, and running a project. And so you'll be able to benefit also from their experience in order to prepare the best proposals. So for that purpose, we'll have the pleasure to hear Enrico Biele from Enea, who present the project he's leading called LEAP for SME, which is related to energy audits, and Simone Zanoni from the University of Brescia, who will present the project ICCEE, which is related to value chain cooperation. And at the end of this, we'll have about 20 minutes for questions and answers, which will be based on your questions in Slido. Now, related to this, please don't hesitate to ask your questions already during the sessions through Slido. For those of you who are not yet familiar with Slido, it's slido.com, and you type the event code EULIFE 2023. Then on the top left corner, I think you'll have to select a room that corresponds to this session. So this is session 3 on businesses. And in order to avoid that we have too many questions which are overlapping, please try to vote for the questions that are already there. The ones that you find most interesting will be basically taking the questions by order of priority based on the number of votes they get. But so, yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Oronzo, the floor is yours to start presenting on the topic for businesses.
Thank you, Adrien. Thank you very much, and good morning, all. I am Oronzo D'Aloisio, and I am Project Advisor in the Life Energy and Life Climate Unit in ICCEE. And together with my colleague Filippo Gasparin, indeed, we will present you the business topic, supporting the clean energy transition of European businesses. Let's start from the policy context in which we are today, which is very special. The European Green Deal, growth strategy envisaged by the Commission to reach climate neutrality by 2050, has become even more central after Russia's unjustified and unprovoked invasion in Ukraine. REPowerEU calls for an acceleration of the clean energy transition, a diversification of energy sources, and higher energy savings. Engaging businesses in the clean energy transition is important not only to reach short and long-term climate and energy targets, but also to achieve a full mobilization and deeper cooperation among all players operating across the different value chains of Europe's net zero industry, as highlighted in the Green Deal Industrial Plan. Next, we can see that energy policy instruments, such as the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Renewable Energy Directive, recognize the role that businesses, especially small and medium-sized, which constitute the vast majority of European businesses, can play at local and national level in accelerating the transition. More specifically, the ED establishes obligations for companies bigger than SMEs to undergo energy audits or have an energy management system in place. In line with the political agreement reached last 10th of March by Council and Parliament, Article 8 of the ED will become Article 11, and here the main considerations. The definition of SME will remain the same in line with the Commission recommendation 96 to 80. However, the triggering factor for the obligation will be no longer the size of the company, but the energy consumption. Also, one of the key points discussed in the trilogue is how to support businesses in the implementation of measures, how to remove barriers, how to encourage them whenever possible to explore renewable energy options. Next, we can see that, as highlighted in a report we published in 2021, energy audits can be a very important tool to address the information gaps that especially small medium-sized businesses may have. According to the report, which you can download from the link below, on average, an energy audit can trigger up to 25% energy savings. However, only on average 4.5% are achieved on average due to lack of finance, obligations, awareness, support. Next, we can see that then the scope, for this reason, scope A of the topic is focused on strengthening a favorable ecosystem for energy audits and energy management systems. Proposals can develop support activities both for businesses and or public authorities. The objective should be the key objective of proposals should be to foster in the participating countries the market uptake of energy audits, of cost-effective energy audits recommendations, which can include energy efficiency and, where relevant, renewable energy measures by companies, especially energy intensive and medium-sized, because they will be at the center of the key changes also of the directive. Proposals should, if we could stay back to the previous slides, yes, proposals should also address the quality of energy audits, by which we mean more harmonization, consideration of the role that European and international standards can play, the skills of energy auditors, an action plan for the recommended measures, valorization of the energy benefits, follow-up systems, and support for data management. As energy management systems based on performance improvement could also be explored. Finally, proposals are encouraged to also consider other barriers that at local, national level may hinder the implementation of projects of energy efficiency or renewable energy. Next, we can see that proposals can develop activities, as we said, either to support companies or to support national regional authorities. There is the topic is not prescriptive with the type of activities that applicants can propose, provided that there is a clear justification in the approach. For businesses, a proposal can develop support activities that are tailored to the participating companies and support them in the uptake of measures. Also, where relevant, corporate energy enhancement can be considered. With regards to national regional authorities, proposals are encouraged to do a gap assessment of the participating ecosystems for energy audits and energy management systems, and via the project trigger the replication of best practices. Take, for example, tax financial incentives, support schemes, informational campaigns, energy efficiency networks, so as to create a more favorable environment for businesses to engage in the clean energy transition. Next, we can see a little bit what are the impacts that we expect for this scope. Proposals should demonstrate how project results will contribute to the expected impacts. However, applicants are not expected to address all of them. So they can also propose additional activity-specific indicators. I invite you to look at the how to prepare an excellent proposal session to have a more in-depth view of what we expect in terms of impacts. For what concerns Scope A, of course, some of the key quantifiable indicators relate to the number of national regional ecosystems that are supported and the number of companies that benefit from direct support. And next, in the final slide, we can see 3 existing projects, one of which, LIP for SME, will be presented in this session. I would encourage you to look into these and other CSA coordination support actions that we have funded in the past related to the clean energy transition of businesses to see whether there are some elements that could be useful for your application, and so that you can actually exploit the results that are already existing and that you're adding value in your proposal. Filippo, the floor is yours for the Scope B.
Thank you very much, Alonso, and good morning, everyone. Also from my side, indeed, I will now present the second part of this topic, which is about fostering energy cooperation among companies. And let me start by saying that for those who had a look at this topic last year, and specifically at the value chain scope, you will quickly realize that we have not changed much, and that basically we have only broadened the scope, as I will explain in a moment. So with that said, let me quickly recall the specific objectives of this scope, which is really aiming at fostering the market uptake of energy efficiency measures and renewables through the development of collaborative mechanisms among companies that are either operating in the same value chain or that are in proximity. And the idea behind is that companies, by placing sustainability within their business model, they will generate an increase in value for the society, so for everyone, because they are contributing to the achievement of the EU Green Deal objectives. And in this context, companies can really look at their suppliers, but also their, I would say, local community as a way to further increase this value. Furthermore, we do think that through this cooperation, companies will become fully aware of the risks associated to deliver on the market products, technology, services that are highly energy intensive, such as the risk of being exposed to the volatility of energy price or reputational risks, especially now in an increasingly environmental friendly marketplace. Next. So as I mentioned, we have broadened the objectives of this scope, and now there are 2 concepts that applicants can look at. One is sustainable value chain, and the other is local cooperation. So as far as the sustainable value chain is concerned, proposals will have to target companies operating in the same value chain, no matter the size. So meaning that the collaborative approaches that will be developed during the time frame of the project can foresee the cooperation between small companies and large companies, of course, in the same value chain, but also among large companies. Then regarding the dimension of the value chain, this can go from local to European and even beyond, if well justified. However, the focus of the activities shall remain within the eligible countries. And you don't necessarily need to target the full value chain. We do know that the energy intensity of the different segments of the value chain change considerably. So it is perfectly fine if you approach and you target and address only one part of the value chain. Moving on to the second concept, which is, remaining in that slide. So the second concept in the table, so the local cooperation. Here, companies and proposals actually will have to target companies in proximity, so meaning in the same region, cluster, or industrial parks. And what we mean for cooperation here is really to support companies to share energy-related assets and services, and of course to facilitate them to have better access to finance, for instance, by bundling together small energy efficiency and renewable projects in order to increase their bankability. Next. So what we are looking for is really to receive proposals that will trigger interest, awareness, knowledge, and know-how on the added value of the selected concept. So again, either sustainable value chain or local cooperation. And this can be done by organizing roundtables, webinars, trainings at local and national and indeed also European level. And in order to further promote these two concepts, we do expect applicants to develop mechanisms in order to capture the multiple benefits of such approaches. So not to focus only on the quantification of the energy savings potentially achievable through the implementation of these two approaches, but also in identify, quantify, and monetize additional benefits, such as the improved value proposition of the company, for instance. Then we do expect that successful proposal will establish concrete cooperation initiatives within the time frame of the project. And this indeed can be done by developing, testing, and validating business model based on the concrete interaction of participating companies, which means that we do expect to see pilots up and running during the project implementation. And then, since we are targeting the business sector, the concept of economic value is, of course, crucial. As we know, we are using economic models from the past that are not really perfectly suitable to capture the value of sustainability within a business model. So that is why applicants should ideally start reflecting on additional economic models, or if you want, languages, then that can really capture this value. Last but not least, we do expect to receive proposal addressing also the development of benchmarking and monitoring mechanisms, again, to support the policymaker to keep track of the progress of the business sector toward the achievement of the EU Green Deal objectives. Next. So, and this is a list of KPIs that will be used to assess your proposal and later on to assess the progress of the project. It is indeed a quite self-explanatory slide, so I will really go quick, and I will briefly go through the different indicators, starting with the first one, so the development of viable business model for energy cooperation, then deployment of energy-related infrastructure and services, number of companies implementing the energy cooperation, indeed the number of relevant stakeholders that will be approached and trained on energy cooperation, and then the last three KPIs that are the same that will be also used in the previous scope. So primary energy savings, renewable energy generation, and investment in sustainable energy, of course, triggered during the time frame of the project. Next. So regarding, so this is actually a non-exhaustive list of relevant projects that we advise you to have a look in case you are planning to submit a proposal. So regarding the sustainable value chain, please have a look at these three projects: Impact What I See and Issue Driver. These three projects, they have really tried to move away somehow from a company-based approach and look at the whole supply chain. You will hear more later on in the session on the ICCEE project, since the coordinator of this project is with us. Unfortunately, I couldn't list here the value chain proposals that were selected last year because they are still under grant agreement preparation process, so they are not really ready for communication. Regarding the second concept, so local cooperation, please have a look at these three H2020 projects, Incubis, Erases, and Sparks, because they have really target companies in proximity with the aim to foster the market uptake of energy efficiency measures among companies. Next. Okay, so regarding the EU contribution and duration, so for this topic, for this year, so for this call 2023, the total available budget is 6 million euros. The expected EU contribution is 1.75 million euros per proposal. So by doing the math, we do expect to finance 3-4 projects. Of course, if additional budget will become available from other topics, we might be able to finance even a 5th or a 6th proposal, but this, of course, we will know only at a later stage. Regarding the funding rate, as you know, the LIFE CET, so the Clean Energy Transition Subprogram of the LIFE, has a quite high funding rate of 95%. And regarding the average duration of this type of projects is really around 3 years. But really, let me highlight that nothing prevents you from requesting a higher contribution or a different duration, provided that you clearly justify the reasons in your proposal. Next. Yeah, so I just want to conclude my presentation by sharing with you some recommendations and if you want lesson learned from past evaluations. So first, really try to convincingly explain in your proposal how you intend to engage companies. So by either by presenting letters of support or for the involvement of multiplayer organizations. Then try already to think at proposal stage how your project will continue after its duration. So in other words, how you intend to approach the market after the duration of the project. Then experts often, unfortunately, they complain about the impact session of proposals. They found that there is often a lack of clarity and that is difficult to follow the calculation and assumptions that are provided in the proposal. So our recommendation here is really to take time to properly develop and explain and substantiate your impacts in the proposal. Then explain how your proposal will go beyond the state of art. So really let us know how your proposal will build on existing projects and what of these existing projects will be reused, will be taken on board in your project, whether it is a software tool, a study, a deliverable, but please not just list the projects without really clearly highlight what will be retained in your proposal. And then the last point is about the fact that we really encourage you already now at the proposal stage again to start thinking on how you can create connections with relevant organizations such as Sensenelec, in case you intend to develop a standardized methodology, or also with relevant initiatives such as the Covenant of Companies for Climate and Energy or the Enterprise Europe Network. And by the way, the latest has also will also support and provide a financial contribution through its network directly to companies, so directly to SMEs, for basically a contribution that can be used to cover part of the costs that are incurred for an energy audit or for installation of photovoltaic panels. So our advice here is try to create this kind of connection and blending of financial opportunities in order, if you want to maximize the impact of your project. Next slide. Yeah, so thank you for the attention and good luck with your work. I hand over to you, Adrian.
Thanks a lot, Alonso and Filippo, for this excellent presentation of the topic. And I can see that a few questions are starting to flow into Slido, so please don't hesitate to add more questions and say if you're interested in the questions that were already asked. So I'll now have more of a quick introduction to two topics, which, as I said, will be presented in full in the session at 1:30, so session 5. And these topics are the one called OSS, which is Integrated Services for the Clean Energy Transition. So I'll just present the focus on businesses. And the other one is PDA, Project Development Assistance, which also is open for proposals that will focus on businesses. Next slide. So starting with the OSS topic, integrated services, the idea of this topic, which we started quite some time ago on home renovation, and we're now expanding it. And as you can see, it's quite a massive topic. It's 15 million euros this year, with several scopes. And one of the scopes is in businesses, small and medium-sized businesses. The starting point is this picture, which is basically trying to summarize the journey of somebody who wants to start investments in energy efficiency and renewables, be it in their home, in public buildings, or in their company. And so starting from the reality that most businesses don't have a very strong motivation, a strong corporate motivation at least. They are lacking the skills. They're also lacking simply the time to look at what can be done and basically develop a pipeline of energy investments. Support schemes are usually fragmented, so you can get support on one specific technology, but not on others. And then there are usually rather high implementation costs because you need to, usually this is the first time that you do this, for rather modest investment size when you're targeting SMEs. And then usually access to financing solutions is also usually not adequate or complicated or hard to understand. And that's also one of the obstacles. Next slide. So this topic is really about putting in place integrated services that make the life of the business easier when they want to invest in the clean energy transition. So it's all about reducing complexity of the investment process, simplifying the decision-making, making it easy for the company to just say what they want and have somebody supporting them at all steps in the investment journey. So why do we call them integrated services? It's because it's also about integrating. It's about connecting the relevant actors in the value chain. So it's not necessarily about inventing something that doesn't exist. It's about making it available and packaging it as an integrated service, which is many times what is missing. So it's all about, yes, streamlining access to the different support measures, whether they are technical assistance, whether they are financial support on the investments or financial support on the engineering and so on. What should these projects deliver? If you're interested in that, it's really, you need to deliver services which are implemented on the ground, which are operational, which are tested during the time of the proposal. There's no requirement to have actual investments signed and implemented during the time of your project, but you really need to have something which is operational, which businesses can call, can use, it has been tested, and it makes sense. And then, we'll also be looking in terms of the impacts, whether it's an online platform or is it a physical desk that will have also different impacts, obviously, because just online platforms are not necessarily sufficient. Next slide, please. So who should develop this kind of integrated services? This is pretty open, and I think it's really important to understand. This can be developed by fully private consortiums. This can be developed by public authorities. This can be developed by a mix of both. You could be one single entities. This is really open. What is important to understand also is that this topic and the PDA topic also, you can apply with one single entity from one single country, meaning it can be a fully national or local project. You don't have to do everything in English, or you can basically work operationally to deliver those services. Next slide. One point that we'd like to highlight here is that you really need to build strong and trustworthy partnerships with local actors. I would say also in the case of businesses can be sectoral actors. Doesn't necessarily have to be at the local level, but it's really important to look at what are the needs of your stakeholders, identify them, and who will be the people that you need to mobilize. So getting support from your key stakeholders. I mean, this is true across all topics in LIFE CET, but here in this topic, it will be important to see that you manage to integrate the different stakeholders, both at proposal stage and during your project, because we think that a key factor for success is the ability to involve all the key stakeholders. Next slide. So here, this is, you'll be able to read the text and get more info at 1:30, but just wanted to highlight a few things under scope D, which is small and medium-sized businesses. One point that is important is if you want to develop a proposal here, it's not just about preparing energy audits. It's really about covering the preparation and the implementation of investments. So business cases, but even more going towards the engineering, so support on the engineering of investments, supporting SMEs on the procurement, supervising the works, making sure that the works are delivered as designed, quality assurance, managing litigations, which is often a key issue, identifying the available funding, matchmaking with banks, everything that can really support the implementation phase of investments. So not just about making it available, making information available, making energy audits available, but really going towards the implementation part of investment journey. So this is the OSS topic, and this is really new this year with the scope on businesses. So we're really looking forward to having proposals here. More on this at 1:30, and then if we move to the next slide, I'll quickly present the PDA topic. This is a topic that we have been funding for many years now, so not as new, but still very relevant, and it has a clear focus on businesses. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate to apply. The idea of PDA is how do we move from a general project idea as a company or as a local authority, as anybody, to the actual implementation of sustainable energy investments. And we know that there are a few steps which are usually pretty difficult to implement, and they go from, having a business plan, a feasibility study, doing the financial engineering, the technical engineering, procurement, and all of this, that basically all the steps that are needed to develop the project idea into an actual investment project. Project development assistance, to put it simple, funds all the activities that are necessary to make the project happen. The activities here, but it could be broader. This is really quite open. The requirement is that for every euro that you receive from the EU as EU funding, there needs to be 15 euros of investments at the end of the project. Now, investments means signed work contracts, not necessarily implemented, but you need to have signed contracts which represent 15 times the funding that you received. Again, here, proposals can be submitted by one entity in one member state. Again, this is not necessarily about international cooperation. It's about delivering operational investments in one country. And again, you can perfectly work in your country as long as the reporting with us is taking place in English. Next slide. And here, so this is the list of the target sectors. I'm not going to go through them, but as you can see, businesses, industry, and services are clearly earmarked. So if you've got interest here, please don't hesitate. Do attend the session at 1:30 because that will give you all the clues on how to prepare a proposal. But I think this is really a very nice complement to the topic on businesses, which is looking more at how we can improve the framework and the cooperation between companies. So this is it. I'll stop here for this presentation, and so please, if you've got more questions, do put them in the chat. And then, as I said, we're not going to listen to concrete examples because that's probably the best way to clarify a bit what's expected. So the two next speakers are going to present their experience. Now, be careful. It doesn't mean that we're expecting you to present a similar proposal necessarily, because these proposals were submitted under different calls for proposals with slightly different requirements. But still, they are very relevant, and so we'll listen to Enrico first, who's going to present on LIFE for SME, which focused on creating energy audit schemes for SMEs. So Enrico, the floor is yours for 10 minutes, and then we'll listen to Simone.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And thank you, Sinea, for this invitation. Enrico Biele from INEA, the Italian National Energy Agency, and I'm the coordinator of the LIFE for SME project. LIFE for SME stands for Linking Energy Audit Policies to Enhance and Support SMEs Towards Energy Efficiency. Please, next slide. LIFE for SME is built on three main pillars, which are mapping and understanding the complex context of national, local, and also European support for small, medium-sized businesses. We would like, with our project, to contribute through our research analysis and the broad stakeholders' involvement to support national, local, and if needed, also European institutions in finding adequate solutions to fill the gap of data for SMEs. Knowledge sharing, successes, barriers, but also failures of national policies. We are doing this on two levels, for stakeholders, but much more also for national agencies and governments, which we support as national agencies. The main overall goal of these mentioned sub-goals is to propose at the end of the project, which means in very few months, effective and realistic solutions for policymakers and policy implementers in terms of data, schemes, solutions, including both energy and non-energy benefits, including a wide set of policy recommendations. We have done the first part of the project, so the three first goals in the first, let's say, 1.5 years, and we are working now strongly to complete the second part of realistic solutions. The consortium is composed by pure national energy agencies of 9 European countries, 8 European plus United Kingdom, and we get the support of a communication company. LIFE is also supported by 2 international associations of national energy agencies, 9 ministries, 4 international agencies, so we cover basically 13 countries in deep Europe, plus 18 national SMEs associations, chambers of commerce, and different authorities. Please, next slide. What have we done from the very start of the project? The first step has been to set the scene. We made the pre-assessment of what was available in the proposal, quite wide assessment, but we did it again once, of course, the project started. Why we did it again? First, because between the approval of the proposal and the start, it usually there is usually a time of 6 months, and in the policy sector, things may change, particularly in this period where lots of things, as also have been mentioned, including the recast, were changing. So we set the scene properly then in the proposal, and we also, one step forward beyond the proposal, the thing was to look in depth through the work of the national energy agencies in our countries, if real data was available or not in the field of SME. This was also meaning for us to certify if there was data or not, which was a quite difficult and engaging step, since we got in touch with statistical offices, with ministries. We looked internally in our agencies what was available or not in a lifespan of at least 10 or in some cases 20 years behind. We found that there is a good availability of economic related data, number of enterprises, and interesting results from reputed and relevant institutions, but there is a quite total lack of energy related data on SMEs in terms of how we can get data for this sector in order to support ministries, policymakers, and policy implementers to better do their job and improve or propose new energy efficiency schemes for SMEs. At the same time, we saw that there is a strong need for KPIs for the SME sector. There is not so much literature, neither use of these KPIs for the SME sector. For what concerns the KPIs, we also tried to do a different exercise of assessment. We saw what was available and what was needed, comparing the world of the enterprises and businesses in our countries with the SME world. And we saw that for large enterprises or energy intensive SMEs, there is quite interesting amount of available data, also elaborated and used, but for the SME sector, this was not yet true. Please, next slide. So, of course, after finding the problems and certifying the problems, we tried to look for solutions. The first step has been to fill the data knowledge gap in terms of very, very basic but relevant information of what is the amount of energy that SMEs consume in each country compared to the gross inland consumption, or compared, let's say, to anything. This information was not available until 1.5 years ago, and we developed with quite a lot of effort 2 methodologies, and we applied these methodologies in our countries. We had the first set of results where we found that the impact of SMEs on the gross inland consumption in the countries was between 9 and 18%, except for Italy, where we found a little bit higher values, which we are trying to refine. But in Italy, we have also a different let's say, world in terms of energy intensive SMEs, strongly oriented in manufacturing. So energy intensive SMEs in Italy do what large companies do in some other countries. We are refining the methodologies and we are applying it to Austria and Italy, and submitted it for peer review to have a formal approval also from the scientific community. And I'm confident that in some weeks we will also have results from this very final step for these methodologies. All of this is already published and will be continually published in our website. Please, next slide. Then what we also did was not only to work on the data, but also to gather data and information to improve these policy options. We did different surveys. This was the biggest ones we had, which was a survey plus semi-structured interviews, 177 answers collected. And this survey is important because it's representative of the opinion of the organizations involved in the ecosystem of energy audits in our project countries, including ministries, including national agencies, and including business associations. We also have another specific survey tailored for SMEs, where we gathered the further 116 relevant answers. Please, next slide. We are now assessing the policy options. This slide, which I'm not going to describe, it will take at least a minute, is just probably 2% of what we are doing in elaboration, the data. One hopefully piece of advice, which is a lesson learned for us, is that how did we do this survey? We used the EU facility, which is the EU survey, which is available to all project participants, Horizon, I think also LIFE. We struggled at the beginning to find a proper tool in order to implement a survey, but it was there, it was handy, and I strongly encourage you to use it, EU survey. Please, next slide. Next step, which is the current finalization of the work. We are doing a broad assessment per country. So we are putting together the surveys, the assessment of the data, what we gathered from national observatories. We have done national observatories which reached, that not only reached, also involved several hundreds of participants, mostly from public administrations and business associations. So we are now putting this together, all together, and tailoring national recommendations or proposals for improving the energy efficiency schemes per country. This is an example for Portugal. We are already implementing LIFE4SME in our everyday work as national energy agencies, and this will also be, of course, included in our final results. And we are also supporting external organizations from other countries beyond the consortium, because they asked for support from LIFE4SME, and we were totally happy to provide it during the project implementation. Please, next slide. I've concluded my presentation. Just leave this information for whoever may be interested in. On the 4th of July in Brussels, we will have a one-day final conference, a half-day at the European Parliament, hosted by the ICCEE Committee, Vice Presidency. Plus, we will have an in-depth international observatory session at the Residence Palace in the afternoon. Please stay in touch if you're interested on our website, and we will be happy to welcome you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Enrico, for this this very quick and on-time presentation of the proposal of the project. I was just wondering, I mean, can you maybe share a bit with people, how long did it take you to prepare a proposal? I mean, both in terms of you know, how many days, how many months, but also how much, you know, person days does it represent for you and for the partners? Can you share a bit on that?
Sure, Adrian. We started, I think the deadline was in mid-September, so we started in spring. Can't remember exactly the weeks or months, but it was, I think, March or early April. So let's say 6 months to prepare the proposal. We started very quietly, let's say, with some mandates in the first month, more mandates, let's say, for the second month, and quite linearly, not so linearly, we reached the last 2 months with probably employing 2-person months for the last month, and the penultimate month 1.5. Yes, I would say this time, but please consider that honestly, we were not experienced project coordinators. We do a different job. We are policy implementers and support the policy making process. So consider also that presenting a Horizon 2020 proposal together with other agencies was a quite new exercise for us.
Okay, and so what would you do differently now if you were to redo it again? What would be your
different things? But I try to connect also with what you and Filippo, I think, said on the impact session. First, I would take more care of the impact session during the whole project proposal preparation. We worked a lot on all sessions, but the impact was probably the last one we took care. And the impact session, looking it behind, it's of course the session which accompanies you until the end of the project and beyond. Until the end, beyond, because you have to accomplish with the KPIs, and beyond, it's because it's also a matter of reputation. If you promise something, we want, of course, to keep it for 5 years after the project. And I feel that a couple of things could have been overestimated in terms of KPIs. We could have promised more. For some other ones, we could have promised less. And with some other ones, I mean that these ones is like Pareto rules. They are probably the 20% which ask you then very, very relevant effort, like not the 80, but a little bit less during the project execution. So strongly take care of the impact session, leave it somewhere and check it after 1 month with fresh mind, if it could be an advice.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Enrico, for this really honest feedback. And having been in your shoes, I have to say, I think it's really useful for people to listen to that. And you're lucky to have people who are opening their books and telling you what the truth is behind. Thanks, Enrico. So now let's move maybe to Simone Zanoni from the University of Brescia. And Simone is the coordinator of the ICCEE project. So again, this was selected under a different call. Not to say this is exactly what you should do, but we found that this is still rather relevant to Scope B, because they tried to move away from just a company-based approach to a whole supply chain approach. So focusing on the cold chain for food and beverages. So Simone, floor is yours. Can you tell us a bit about your experience on the project and then on preparing the proposal and the application?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having invited me. And I'm Simone Zanoni. I work as a professor of industrial systems engineering at the University of Brescia. And I have the honor to lead the ICCEE project. And I will give you a short overview of the entire objectives and results with some examples of the activities done during the project. Next slide, please. First of all, the ICCEE project stands for Improving Cold Chain Energy Efficiency. Was a 3 years project under the EU Horizon program, started in September 2019 and ended in end of August 2022, with the main aim of improving energy efficiency in the cold chain of food and beverage, tries to make easier for the sector to undertake energy efficiency measures across the entire supply chain, and to accelerate the implementation of energy audit results, following a holistic approach that moves from a single company perspective to the assessment of the entire cold chain energy impact. The overall partnership consists of 13 different partners across all Europe, mainly 9 countries, and most important, with an heterogeneous composition. As you can see, there are some other university, research institutions, specific association active in the specific sectors, and other institution proactive involved also in a previous project. Next slide, please. Next, okay. So the case that we look at is mainly, even if we look at the cold chain, refrigeration is one of the most important aspect and energy impacting of the whole agro sector, and with the aim of preserving food along the entire chain, there are a lot of aspects that must be considered, and as you can see, there are also a lot of wastes due to lack of proper adjustment and proper cold chain adjustment. When we look at the cold chain, there are different steps that must be considered, starting from the storage of raw materials, the usage of different processing and packaging equipment. There are a lot of impacts of distribution and transport activities. And of course, starting from the, also at the end of the entire value chain, there are a specific consumption related to storage in the sale point, and also at the house in the refrigerator. But later on, you can see what are the exact point of the process. And taking from a recent survey or a recent project conducted by the International Refrigeration Institute, there are a key message that a lot of or huge amount of CO2 emission can be saved if proper cold chain can be managed. Next slide, please. So, as already claimed, the food and beverage cold chain is the target of this project. And as you can see in these slides, all the steps starting from just after the agricultural activity. So our project start with the storage of raw material and considered all the consecutive steps. Of course, here you can see a linear. Of course, it is more a network of activities. And of course, this is one of the main aspects that has been considered. And you can see later on in one of the key activities conducted in the project. Next slide, please. And the overall project is based on two main pillars. First of all, the development of a tool to support the value chain energy mapping, and to facilitate investment decision making, mainly also using as a driver the impact along the chain. So this is one key pillar of the project. Of course, the second pillar is the capacity building program. So as to increase the awareness of the effect of different actors over the entire chain. And most important, should be also remembered that most of the decision makers along the chain usually are not confident with energy issues, and they take decisions that have a huge impact on energy aspects. So we want to also involve those decision makers that are not confident, or they are not usually entitled as energy issues, but their decision make a specific impact on the overall chain energy impact. Next slide, please. So the main idea behind the cold chain perspective, instead of just looking a single actor perspective, as an academic, I started to look at those aspects related to supply chain energy efficiency in different sectors, and applied specific in these cold chain sectors, can be quickly explained as if you look at the single actor, it is possible to achieve implementing different energy efficiency programs and intervention. Of course, a specific improvement here explained in those dark blue bars. So starting from 100% consumption, all actors in the chain, actor 1, 2, and 3, can decrease their energy of some percentage. But of course, there is something that must be remembered, that the chain is interlinked. So there are specific interlink, and specifically, I can say that, of course, the storage of cold chain depends on the orders that your customer play or issue. Then the overall, if you look at the overall system, of course, you can achieve additional savings. with one side is to spread the information along the chain or harmonize those interventions. And of course, sometimes it's not from the technical point of view, but is from operational point of view, you can achieve additional savings. So instead of looking at myopic single actor perspective, we have tried to involve those supply chain perspective. Next slide, please. So from the first pillar, coming back to the first pillar of the project, we have developed a comprehensive toolbox freely available with a set of YouTube video where we explain how to use those tools. The tools are developed in 8 different languages. Starting from the pillar tool, the tool number 1, apart from the others that you can have a look on that if you are more interested. But the cold supply chain tool is one of the pillar tools that we have developed with that aim of mapping the energy consumption over the entire steps of the chain. Next slide, please. We have validated this approach with a series of national events, talking with different actors, showing how the supply chain approach may enhance the energy efficiency and facilitate also the information between different actors of the chain, involving more than 1,000 people and collecting from them specific data on the impact of this approach. Next slide, please. So taking a specific example, we look in deep in different sectors of the cold chain. So we have cases in fruit and vegetables, we have cases in fish, meat, and milk. So we had those kind of mapping of the energy issue along the entire chain. As you can see, there are red lines where we highlighted the most important point where the energy must be reduced. Next slide, please. And giving specific advice on technical issue, but also, as I said, on operational issue and management of different steps of the chain and how to improve the energy usage of different actors. The next slide, please.
Simone, I'm going to ask you to quickly, if you can.
Yes. It's I'm also almost finished. And at least, but not last important, the industry informative network and the e-learning platform helped us also to spread information of the project and to try to put together the offers of technology and the demand of technology in energy efficiency in the cold chain specific sector. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Of course, I'm an academic, and we have also spread the information and the results and the approach with a series of scientific publication freely available, so you can quickly get access on those. It is very important for me to spread the information apart from the deliverables also in journal publications. And last slide should be my reference. Sorry for being a bit late, but I want to put as much content as possible. The project is ended, but still ongoing different activities.
No worries, and I think it's great also to see the enthusiasm of Simone and in showing what great results you've delivered. Simone, can you maybe just also explain to us a bit how you've worked with the different market players during the time of the project? Because I mean, I think it's really important to produce publications, because that also, you know, embeds the knowledge into the whole scientific community, but more precisely as a university also, how were you working with companies, with federations? How did that work at the proposal stage and during the project?
Okay, looking at the one of the key success of the project, of course, was the active involvement of federation and sectorial associations working in the specific field as project partners. Of course, this is very important to, first of all, spread the information about the project is live, it is ongoing, but also to actively involve the affiliated companies. As I said, we touch more than 1,000 companies, and I cannot mention that the project ran all mainly during the COVID situation. We started in September 19, and when we planned to do the in-present activities, we have those kind of problems. But the mediation of federation as project partners helped us a lot. If they are involved as external, would be very difficult, or more difficult than if they are involved as partners. So this, and we started from the beginning to think that the involvement of companies is important. So this is
great. And what about other stakeholders? Did you integrate them in the project, although they were not partners, or was that just your consortium that was sufficient to deliver?
Our consortium was sufficient, of course, with the help of regional agency. We tried to involve in different countries, but mainly working with the partners, yes.
Okay, maybe just one last question. I mean, what would be, your main recommendation to applicants, to the people here listening? What would you recommend in order to have a successful or good proposal?
Again, like Enrico, I'm not an expert in leading a project or preparing a proposal. Actually, it was the first project where I was project coordinator, so I learned a lot, and I think I still have to learn a lot. But if I would like to give some advice, first of all, have a careful idea on past project. It's very important, and if it is possible to involve some partners of key past projects, would be very, very effective. So a lot of tools, a lot of data have been collected. Information are public available, but of course, if you have on board past partners, you can get information quickly and really ready available. Another key suggestion is to have an heterogeneous partner composition is very important. First of all, without overlapping competencies, I think. This is very important to have a smooth running of the project. And of course, the most important aspect, if I want to put as a committed partner. So, and probably, rightly from the start, if a partner is committed and if it's quickly to answer. So do not hold partners that you probably postpone, and I don't know if they are not promptly answering to your request. Maybe better to think and not to have them on board. So committed partner. Okay,
great. Thanks a lot, Simone, again. We're now going to move to the Q&A session. So as we've said, you can raise your questions on Slido, and we're now going to take if our colleagues from the technical support can show the questions on Slido. And as I said, we're going to be taking them by order. And as we're speaking, please don't hesitate to vote for questions or add more questions. So first question is, things are changing, but under scope B, is it possible to combine the two approaches under the same proposal?
Yes, Adriana can take this question.
Yeah, if we can have again the questions, because now I can't see them anymore. Yes, thank you. Yes, Filippo, I think if you can answer on that one.
Yeah. So I don't see it any longer, but okay. So yes,
Would it be possible to combine the two approaches under the same proposal: sustainable value chain and local cooperation?
I can see it now. Perfect. So the reply would be yes. Nothing prevents you from indeed combining these two approaches. I can imagine that there might be situations in which companies that are operating in the same value chain are also in proximity. But let me be crystal clear that this by combining these two approaches, this will not give you any extra points, meaning that your proposal will be no more successful than the other proposals that are targeting a specific concept. So again, either a sustainable value chain or local cooperation. But yes, indeed, you can combine.
Okay, and then we've got the top scorer now. I think our participants don't have a lot of questions, I think, because I don't see a lot of votes. But our projects fostering the uptake of green hydrogen eligible under Scope B. Filippo, that would be again for you, maybe?
Yes, sure. Yes, of course. I mean, green hydrogen is a crucial subject, and its supply chain involves many actors. So it is perfectly in line with the Scope B. My only advice would be not really to focus on the technology development, but rather on trying to foster the collaboration among companies, and also to try to think and test the relevant business model. So centralized versus decentralized approach. So meaning just to have it clear, centralized. So the creation of big plant producing green hydro that will be then transferred through pipes in the relative place for consumption, or whether to have it more distributed throughout the territory.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a question on whether proposals are expected to quantify the impacts of the proposal on all the indicators that are listed for Scope A and for Scope B. Maybe I can answer on that one. I think if you want, I mean, the best answer is if you haven't watched the plenary session on how to write a good proposal, do watch the recording, because that will give you insight on how to prepare this. But the short answer is no, you don't need to quantify all indicators if they are not relevant to your proposal. Okay, and then we've got a question that says in the KPIs list, there's one KPI that addresses the deployment of energy-related infrastructure. Now, does it mean this infrastructure needs to be developed during the project? I
guess it is for me. It is. I think it is mostly addressing the Scope B, because it is actually a KPI for the Scope B. So indeed, we know that by the time an energy infrastructure is conceived, planned, and implemented, it can take some time. So we don't expect to have this infrastructure already implemented during the time frame of the project. Nevertheless, we would like to see this investment reflected in a business plan, and ideally with the commissioning phase starting within the 5 years after the project duration.
Okay, we've got one question asking whether energy audits of companies can be funded from the project. That would be maybe more for...
Yes, I can.
So, yeah.
Sure, Adriana can answer that. The answer is yes. However, we encourage applicants to also look for alternative funding, such as, for example, existing support scheme at national, regional level to cover these costs.
Okay. So we've got more questions coming. It's not too late, but soon late. But are energy communities between businesses also seen as a form of energy cooperation, Filippo?
Yes, surely, yes.
Okay. Then we've got one question that says requirement local, not value chain, but three. So I think the question is whether if you're targeting local cooperation, you still need to have 3 countries in the proposal. Filippo?
Yeah, and that applies, yes. I mean, we are bound to the rules for this topic, which is to have a minimum three partners, from three different member states.
Yeah. Should proposals focusing on support to national or regional authorities foresee the replication of best practices across participating countries during the project? Alonso?
I can take that, Adrienne. Yes, absolutely. So the impact that we would expect from to see in proposals is that already within the duration of the project, proposals not only take a look at which are the gaps, which are the best practice that could be shared, so coming from another region, from another country, and to then conclude the project just at that with recommendations. We would like actually to see that participating countries have this cross-fertilization, share between them what they're actually very good at, what they're excellent at with other countries, because the idea is that they can all learn from each other, and to rather than simply looking at their national or just regional context. So to look a little bit beyond, to be a bit more open-minded. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, last question, and we're going to need to close anyway, so we're just on time. I'm a university and I need the consultancy of a professor that lives in the UK. Is there any way to involve the professor with its own budget or his organization in the UK? Maybe I can take this one. So indeed, the UK is not part of the eligible countries. So UK applicants, unfortunately, cannot take part in this call. The possible way for that could be if you subcontract to this, well, if you subcontract part of the activities, but in that case, you will need to have a proper procurement, in order to ensure best value for money. Procurement, at least you need to have procurement rules and use the procurement rules of your organization. So it is possible, but not necessarily simple. Okay, well, we're just slightly late, so I think we're going to close the session now. Just a few words to close, to say that the recording of this session, as well as all the other sessions, will be available on the ICCEE website very soon. Please also remember that tomorrow you can still set up one-to-one meetings with other interested applicants through the B2Match platform. And this is really an opportunity to get in touch with other organizations and also to set up a good consortium for a successful project. And I think, yes, I'd like to give a round of applause for our speakers, for my colleagues Filippo and Oronzo and Simone and Enrico. So even though we can't hear the audience, I'm sure that if we were in the same room, there will be a lot of clapping for you. So please be thanked again for your participation. I'd like to wish you all also on behalf of ICCEE successful preparation of your application, and have a nice lunch and nice afternoon. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.